Welcome to Between Over and Next with your hosts, Holly and Robert, a happily married couple who explore the space between what was, what is, and what's to come. From career changes to navigating life's uncertainties, this dynamic duo will empower you to live your happiest life at every age and stage. So, get ready because your journey with Holly and Robert starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Between Over and Next. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Robert.
So today, as we've talked about in the past, and is really kind of one of the things that we focus on, is the pivot. And, you know, when Holly first presented this topic as a pivot, I said, like, I'm not sure about this. But then as we began to research and find our expert to talk about divorce, I realized that it really is just another pivot. And like every other pivot in your life, how you approach it, how you prepare for it, the people that you choose to help you through the process will make all of the difference in the world to how successful the outcome is. And I think if you approach it and you look at it that way, I think there is a much higher chance that you'll come out on the other end in not such a bad situation. Because, you know, let's face it, the percentages
Pretty
not
high.
so good. Pretty high, right? Huh?
Yeah, 40 to 50%.
Coming from the wedding world.
Right.
You know, we
happy.
you know,
happy beginnings.
happy, and I have to say, and I've had wedding clients, if you remember, a couple of wedding clients where I've done second weddings.
Yes.
You know, for them, I did such an amazing job on the video the first time.
Right.
That even though the marriage fell apart, they still wanted me for the second wedding.
But importantly, we like to share stories, and we want to focus on the changes that occur in people's lives. And divorce is something that does impact a lot of people.
You undoubtedly have friends and family that are going through it, have gone through it, and maybe more than once with varied outcomes.
So with a remarkable personal background, our guest today, Sal Simeone, has emerged in recent years as one of Northern New Jersey's leading matrimonial lawyers.
And not just that, but as we discovered, and as you will too, he had his own personal pivots that he had to take, which were a non-traditional pathway to his becoming an attorney. So we're really lucky to have him on the show today. So let's meet Sal Simeone. Hi, Sal. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hello, Robert. Hello, Holly. Thanks for having me.
So, you know, it was very interesting when Holly and I were researching your podcast and your interview. You know, we thought really that the pivot that we would be talking about would be solely related to divorce, right? Because that's the focus of today. But it wasn't until we learned about your story, your personal story, and how many personal pivots you had leading up to your professional career. So why don't we start with that? Why don't you take us through a little bit of your pivot history in your personal life?
In high school, I was a three-sport athlete, you know, captain of the team, big man on campus, BMOC. Coming out of high school, there was a lot of expectations from me. Well, unfortunately, those expectations did not take place. I had a small scholarship to Springfield College, which lasted a few days. Came home. I didn't like it away for a football scholarship. Came home, went to Montclair State for about 2 semesters, didn't do so well. Ended up leaving college at about 19 and never going back until I was 25 years old. I didn't get my proverbial act together until I was about 25. I had been married for about a year or so and decided that I couldn't just continue to flounder. So I had been working as a U.S. mailman in Morristown for a couple of years when I first got married, and decided that with the help of a lot of people that I needed to move on from there. Even though I stayed as a mailman for the next 11 years, I decided to go back to college at night. So I delivered the mail in Morristown during the day on Washington Street, where there was about 40 or 50 lawyers. And then at night, I would go to college. I started off at Morris County, went there, went to St. Peter's in Jersey City for a semester or two, and ended up getting my undergrad at Rutgers in Newark, all at night. And it probably took me about 6 years. And then from graduating at Rutgers, I applied to law school. Thought I was going to get into law school in New Jersey and things would be smooth. Didn't happen. Had to go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, go to Widener Law School. I was married, had to live in Widener and come home on weekends. So I was out there for a year, first year of law school. At night, worked for UPS during the day, not the Postal Service, but UPS. I went to the rival. And then came back to Jersey as I got transferred into Seton Hall. I was accepted into Seton Hall Law for a sophomore year, and I began my law school at night at Seton Hall, got my job back at the U.S. Post Office, and worked again during the day, 6:30 to 2:30, 3 o'clock, came home for an hour or two, and then got down to the North Campus of Seton Hall Law School Monday, Wednesday, and then Saturday morning. Night school was Monday, Wednesday, 6 to 10, Saturday, 9 to 1.
Now, thinking back, your first undergraduate experience, was law part of that picture?
My grandfather was a lawyer. I'm named after my grandfather. So law was always in my family. Salvatore Simeone, he was an attorney in East Orange. I wouldn't say that I was super tight with my grandpa Sal. I was probably closer to my grandpa Joe, who was a janitor and the elevator man in the courthouse, who opened the elevator door for my grandfather, the lawyer. But as he got older and as I got older, we did get closer. And as I worked my way through school, what am I going to do? I was an English major, which I think was really key because communication, in my opinion, is a key to everything. So I would say it became my focus. Didn't start out as my focus, but became my focus about 3/4 of the way through undergrad.
And so a pivotal moment, let's talk about that. As you're delivering mail
to all these attorneys.
Right. There, and just by chance, right? Just that was your
my
route.
route. Just
you could have just gotten all residential
right.
route.
But I didn't. I got the main thoroughfare of Morristown.
And I like it to say there, Holly knows this, there are no coincidences.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so talk to us about when it kind of clicked and when you made this connection, this contact, that changed everything for you.
Well, the first stop on the route was a gentleman by the name of Larry Cutler, who happened to be at the time one of the preeminent matrimonial lawyers in the state, not just Morris County, but the state. I delivered Larry's mail every day, first stop on the route, for 11 years. And as I got into law school and began to see that I wanted to be an attorney, he became something of a mentor. I would talk to him all the time. And then when I did graduate law school, I went to him to ask him if he wanted to hire me. His first response was, Sal, I'm a solo. I'm going to stay on my own. So I went across town. Little did I know it was one of his rivals. And I worked for Shelly Simon for a year. And then Larry called me one night and said, listen, meet me for dinner. And he offered me a job as a second-year lawyer, which became sort of my legacy because I was with Larry from 96 to 2007. Ended up as his partner, ended up owning part of his firm. Larry Cutler opened up many doors for me. He was my first mentor. He was an amazing man. He still is in South Carolina these days. I owe a lot to Larry Cutler, and I think for all the young people out there listening and even the older people, you're always going to need somebody to help you open doors. Don't say no to that. Accept that with grace because it's really necessary. I tell my kids all the time, you're going to find somebody who's going to help you get a break. Larry Cutler was one of the first for me.
It's the people you meet along the way.
Larry, he introduced me to the top matrimonial lawyers around as a first and second year. And I was older. I was 34 at the time. I had a little bit of an advantage over the younger lawyers who were 26, 27. I had some life experiences, which is important. But that was the first real break with Mr. Cutler. And he was the first stop on the mail round. I have a picture of me handing him his mail one year. It really was quite the story.
So why divorce law?
That was something that, one, Larry was a divorce lawyer. Larry Cutler was a family lawyer only and one of the best in the state. So that was my introduction. But on the other hand, growing up where I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, Vailsburg section in Newark, New Jersey, I saw a lot of petty crime. I couldn't be a prosecutor because I knew too many people who skirted the law. It would be hypocritical for me now to turn around and try to put them away. I couldn't be a criminal attorney because while I would have had many clients, it just wasn't my moral structure. I just didn't want to represent criminals and go to court as a defense attorney. Although many people told me, you're the quintessential defense attorney, you should be that. I didn't want to. I could go to the bigger law firms, but they were mostly cookie cutters. Everybody with the same blue suit. I didn't fit that mold. The only thing I really fit was being a family lawyer and being really raised by a mother and a daughter and a sister. My dad was in the house. He was always there, but he took more of a back role in my upbringing. It was my mom and my sister. And, I was always involved in their talks and what they were talking about in the neighborhood. And family law is very personal, very people-oriented. And that's who I was. And I just fit into family law. And I've been doing it now. It's my 30th year. I started in 1994. Here we are, 2024. In June, it'll be 30 years.
That's terrific. So you've not only had some pivots along your professional journey, but you've also had some in your personal journey, and they are kind of related to divorce. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure, they're directly related to divorce. I was married once before for 19 years. I have 2 children. Alexandra is 26, and Salvatore Jr., we call him Tori in the family. He's 24. Everybody else calls him Sal. I got divorced. It must have been 2005, 2004, 2005. And, it was not something that I saw coming. It just sort of happened. We grew apart mostly from the journey to become successful. Going to school, working all day, going to school at night, going to Pennsylvania for a year. It was not easy on us. And I would just say as we grew older, we grew apart. And it was something that we had to face, and we did. And so once I got divorced, I was about, I would say 43. The next phase of my life took over. So I was single for about 7 years. And for anybody who tells you there's not life after divorce, that is not true. And I try to tell my clients that all the time. Well, they all tell me I'm never going to date, I'm never going to meet somebody, I'm never going to live again. It's not true. There is life after divorce, and you need to go out and get it with both hands, because if not, you're going to end up sitting in your house and just wasting away. So for 7 years, it was a huge adjustment for me to be single after being married for 20 years. But like everything, I adapted to it until about 7 years later when I got a phone call from my high school sweetheart, Cindy, and we started talking. And before you knew it, in a couple of years, we were together and moved in together and got married as well. I'm married to Cindy now. It's been about 12 years. And, it's been a great time with Cindy, just really enjoying ourselves. And I enjoy work. To me, being an attorney is, it's akin to competition. And I was an athlete, as I mentioned before. And, you service your clients well. Even though you look at it as a competitive thing, it brings out the best in you to be the best attorney you can be, at least for me. And that serves my clients well, because I really think that there are some attorneys out there that don't. There are some attorneys that don't have the passion, that don't have the caring that they need to have. I'm talking about family law, because in family law, people are weak, they're vulnerable, they're scared, and they need somebody who's going to be their champion, their gladiator. Men and women both. In my career, I've probably represented more women than men, maybe 75, 65%, 70% women. And I've sort of made a career out of letting women know we are not going to let your husband push you around. We are going to get you a fair deal. Your kids are not going to be used against you, because that's one of the strategies that happens in a divorce. They try to use the kids against whichever parent is the parent of primary residence.
So how does one go about the process? If someone were to meet you and put their trust in you, they're lucky that they've done that. So if you were giving advice to someone who's looking for that type of representation, what's the process?
Well, it's the most important part of the process, you picking your attorney. It is not like you picking your cardiologist or your surgeon. You just want them to save you, do what they have to do, and the hell with their bedside manner. In divorce law, where it's a 24/7 situation, people have emergencies at night, the kids are fighting, the husband did something, the wife did something. I give everyone my cell phone number. And one of the things you have to do when you're starting the divorce process is, one, educate yourself, but get yourself the best attorney you can get, and somebody who's paying attention when you go for your consultation. If that attorney's taking phone calls, looking at notes, that's not the attorney for you. Don't do it over video. Don't do it over the phone. Meet your attorney in person. And look, if a judge calls and your attorney has to take the phone call, that's different, the court call. But absent the court calling, there is no reason that for that hour, you shouldn't have your attorney's full attention. Now, there's certain tricks or certain tips you could find good attorneys. Certified matrimonial attorneys have to have a certain level of experience. They have to pass a test. So I would say to you that if you're hiring a certified matrimonial attorney, at least from a legal acumen standpoint, you have the right person. There's also the Academy, the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, which is one of the elite groups of matrimonial lawyers. And again, legal acumen, if you have an AAML lawyer, you have somebody who knows the law. Now, the second part of that is why you're meeting them. Because you could have somebody who's super book smart, knows all the law, but doesn't have people skills, doesn't have the ability to connect with you. And connection is really what the job is about, what life is about as far as I'm concerned, and how people become successful. Because if you don't have that likability quotient, I call it a likability quotient, if you don't have the ability to bring somebody in, I don't know how you're going to keep clients, because clients have a sixth sense. They know when you're not being sincere. They just know it. Clients will tell you from across the table if they feel it or if they don't. And it's wonderful when they tell you that I understand, I feel like I'm connecting with you. And there are times they don't. Maybe it's not your fault. Maybe you're just not a good fit. But being a good fit is important. So look up the lawyers who have the legal acumen. Look at certification. Look at AAML. Look at Martindale Hubbell. They're AV rated. But in my opinion, once you have that 5 or 6 people, 3 or 4, 2 or 3, and you start to interview, the connection process, the sincerity process, does this lawyer listen to me? Because some lawyers talk at people. As a family lawyer, you can't. You have to be able to listen because they're telling you their story, and that's what the case is about, especially a custody case, which is sort of my subspecialty. If you're in a custody case, you need to know details. You need to know who these people are, how they are as parents. And it's not always something that happens in an hour consultation. It doesn't. It takes more time, and you have to put in the time. So even though it's an expensive process, if you find the right attorney, you're on your way to at least, I don't want to say a successful divorce, but maybe more palatable than it would be otherwise. Because in any situation, a divorce is difficult.
Sure.
And there are casualties.
Yeah. So divorce can vastly be different depending on the life stage of the couple. Yes. So there are different unique challenges that you may have observed with younger couples versus those who just decide to divorce later in life. So how would you tailor your approach to address those differences?
And it's a good question because you do tailor your approach. When you have a couple come in, they're married 2 years, or one person comes in, they're married 2 years, they don't have children, or maybe they just had a baby. If there's a child involved, it's always more complicated, okay? But the younger generation, from what I have experienced in the last 10, 12 years, if their marriage is not working, they're not going to stay in it. They're going to come to you, they're going to look for an attorney, they're going to get out of that marriage, and they're going to move on. The older generation, much older, from people who were married like, I'm 63, so people who were married 30 years ago, they would hang on and try to make it work. They would talk about, I want the kids to have an intact family. And I would say to them, even then, having an intact family, if their child isn't seeing any love and seeing any affection, is that really better for the child than if you guys split and you end up with a more loving family? So I would say the younger generation is quicker to eject out of the marriage and move on and try to do their life over again. The middle-aged people are really at the crossroads. They're married 16, 17, 18 years. The kids are going to go off to college, and they're torn. I'm going to leave my children at this point when they really need us the most, but you have to tell them, you have to try to counsel them, because as an attorney, you also are a counselor at law, and there's a part of that title that is a counselor. You give them legal advice. Some of them want to know what I should do, and I have to tell them, I can't make the decision for you, but here are your options. And as an attorney, you have to give people options. You can't say to somebody, well, it's 1 to 20. People want to know what you think. Give me your opinion. So if somebody asks me about custody, a father says to me, look, I've been working 60 hours a week. My wife's home with the children. Do I have a chance at custody? The real answer is no, you don't. Can you have a good parenting time schedule? Yes. If your wife is a good mom and you're a good dad, but you've been working 60 hours a week and she's been home raising the kids as a stay-at-home mom, 85% of the time, she's going to be custodial parent. You're going to be the visiting parent or the non-custodial parent. You can still have an amazing relationship with your children. You're going to get great parenting time. But when you ask about custody, you have to be honest with them. Now, if it's a situation where both parties work, they're both out of the house, there's a nanny taking care of the kid, then there's a good chance that one or the other can get custody, or it could be a 50-50. So alimony, 20-year marriage, husband worked, not to be sexist, but husband worked the whole time, wife raised the kids, he comes into the office, I don't want to pay alimony. Well, you have to say to him, you're going to pay alimony, and you're going to pay alimony for a long time. And if you don't give them the right information, you're doing them a disservice, because the worst thing you could do is give a potential client promises you cannot keep. It is the first thing they teach you in law school. It's the first thing they teach you in all the ICL classes that you go to as a young attorney. Do not make promises you can't keep. So I don't know if I answered your question, Holly, directly, but I would say I do tell younger people, if you know it's not going to work, then do what you have to do. I don't try to keep people together. I don't try to break people up. When they ask me, what do you think? I say, what do you think? Do you feel it? Do you think you can make this work? Do you want to go to counseling? No, we've tried it. So I say to them, well, maybe the writing's on the wall. Now, fast forward to a couple who's married 25 years, kids 18, 19, 20. Are they a little bit more invested? You bet. So maybe you say to those people, and again, I'm in the business of being a divorce lawyer, not quote unquote a marriage counselor. I say to them, have you gone to counseling? Have you tried to work it out? And they do say yes or no. And many times when they get to you, they're at the point of, I'm done. You do have the people who say they're not sure, but I would tell you 80% when they get to the divorce lawyer, the hardest thing is to make the call to the divorce lawyer to set up the consultation. Once you set up the consultation, you pretty much have made your decision. And in 30 years, I may have had 3 or 4 couples reconcile in 30 years. So that's not a lot.
Yeah,
and,
I was just going to ask you that.
That's not a lot.
Yeah.
So aside from selecting the best possible attorney, and based on all of your years of experience, what is the single piece of advice that you would give to someone just starting the process of divorce?
It is, in my opinion, get the best attorney, not necessarily the best legal attorney, the best attorney that fits you. You have got to have a good fit. If you have somebody who doesn't have a good personality, but they're brilliant, it might be maybe if it's a different type of law, that's the person you want. But in family law, where there's not a jury, you never go before a jury, you only have judge trials or judge motions. There's no swaying the jury with, this great performance. The judge knows the law usually, unless he hasn't been in a family court much, but for the most part. So again, I really think it's picking the attorney. I think it's understanding the process. The attorney has to lay the process out for you. You need to know what's going to happen, at least some outline of it. As you go along, you need to work with your attorney. Your attorney works for you. You're the boss. And I tell my clients, the best client is an involved client. I don't want somebody telling me, Sal, you make the decisions. No, we make the decisions together. I'll give you advice. I'll give you options. You tell me what you want. I'll tell you if I think we can get it. And it's a real partnership. And I think maybe that's what I'm looking for. Find an attorney you feel you can partner up with and get you through this as quickly as you can, as effectively as you can, and with as less damage to your children and to you as you can. That's a tall order, because divorce takes its toll on children, on couples, on extended families. There are cases where it's the Hatfield versus the McCoys. Everybody is against everybody. And you'd be surprised how many times people want to bring their parents. They want to bring their children to the consultation. And I have a rule that I never let people bring their children to meet me. Because when you're in a custody case, you don't want to meet the children. They want you to meet them. They want you to see who you're fighting for. Mm-hmm. And I say to them, I understand what you're saying, and I do know who I'm fighting for. But I will not meet your child, because that child is going to look at me as somebody who's trying to hurt one parent or the other and help one parent or the other. And I'm not a weapon. I am a shield. Some attorneys like to consider themselves a weapon, okay? They think that makes them more desirable as an attorney. Being a shield for your client also encompasses you having to be offensive at times and do things affirmatively. But you're not looking to hurt anybody. You're looking to get the best deal you can for your client. And if it goes to court, you need to know how to litigate a case. A lot of family lawyers are not adept at litigating cases in court. They're okay with arguing motions, but when it comes to asking questions on cross and direct examination, there are not a lot of family law attorneys who know how to do that.
So it sounds like you approach your cases with fairness and with being reasonable as much as you can be during this very volatile
I tell my clients, we're going to let the other side set the tone. If they want to be reasonable, I will be reasonable. But if they're going to come at us, then we're going to fight back.
So reflecting on all the cases that you've handled over the years, share with our listeners major lessons that you've learned about human relationships and the legal process of divorce that you wish more people were aware of before they enter into marriage or decide to divorce.
Starting with the legal process first, I've learned that fire and brimstone is not always the way to go. When I was a young attorney, I started in 1996, 95. In the first 7, 8, 10 years of my career, I was known as extremely aggressive, challenging judges, challenging other lawyers. And as life went on, I realized that to be assertive is how you have to be, and being aggressive is maybe too much. You turn people off. In my career of 30 years, I've had potential clients tell me, geez, I've been abused by my husband and you're so aggressive. I feel like, you're being abusive. And I took that to heart. I was a young attorney. I was, 38 years old, 39 years old, trying to make my name. But through the process of having mentors, Larry Cutler, other people later on in my life, Paul Weiner, I became understanding that assertive is enough and you don't have to be super aggressive.
You're seeing endings. But perhaps you can offer some insight into what you've learned through your cases to help others avoid divorce.
I don't know if I can make them avoid divorce, but when they're getting divorced, they need to know that their life isn't over. And many, many, many women and men come to the divorce table and think their life is over. Even if they're 40, 53, 60 years old, they think that's it. I'm going to just shrivel up and die. And, I tell them about my experience, that I was divorced at 43, married for 20 years, 2 kids, the whole bit, and that it took a while to get used to things, and it's going to be a big adjustment, but you are going to either find another partner or enjoy life on your own, but you are not going to just be an old maid or an old hermit, because that's how people feel when they're going through divorce. Not to bring up the TV show, The Golden Bachelor, but when I watched it with my wife, because she wanted to watch it, and I saw these older women in their 60s, 65, blossoming because they realized that their life is not over. It really is a microcosm of the world, because divorce is so devastating to so many people. How am I going to live? I don't have money. I don't have a job anymore, he'll tell me. She'll say, I don't know how to write a check. So many things are human that you realize that people need help getting going. They don't need somebody keeping them down. They need somebody propping them up. And one thing about communication and connection, and you're between over and next, I like,
Thank you.
Your show.
Thank you.
Is there's layers. You're young. Now you're middle-aged. Now you're older. But at 63, after having 4 years of some health problems, I do feel like the next 15 years for me is like a bright future. And I could see how somebody who was a young attorney or even a young person, they need to get out there. They need to communicate. I tell my kids all the time, reading, writing, speaking. If you can do those 3 things, you will be a success. Wrap them up in a likable personality. Be positive, be optimistic, and you will find that people relate to you differently. Because even as an adult, when we see somebody who's sort of miserable, or I'll take a client comes in and they're down and they really have a dour look on their face. I say to them that you're not at a funeral. I said, this is not the end of your life. This could be the start of your life. And they don't really buy into it at first. They're right away like, yeah, sure, I know you tell everybody that. And, over time, being with me, they do understand what I'm saying because I really try to bring that to the table. And I do think it's very similar to a lot of things that happen to us in life. We get knocked down, we got to get back up. And people, I think, have a resiliency that they don't realize. And children, and being a custody lawyer, it's incredible how kids just, their parents think that they're getting, torn apart, and they are suffering. But these kids really are resilient. I mean, they really love both parents. They want both parents, no matter who's the custody parent. If there's no abuse involved, if there's not, sex or physical abuse, these kids want both parents. And more the court is looking to do 50-50s or, half-time or close to half-time, because in the old days, the dads were working all the time. And those guys who got divorced, they were like, I'll have every other weekend and maybe a night during the week. Well, the younger dads who are working from home, who have the ability to come home early, they're like, listen, I want to be involved all the way. And to the mom's credit, a lot of the moms are working. And it's, they're like, sure, of course, I need help. I'm not Superwoman. But the older thought processes have changed a lot.
Well, what you're really saying is that this is for the best interest of the family as a whole.
They say the best interest of the children. That's kind of the standard in family law. What's the best interest of the children? But it really is, if you can do a divorce without too much damage and get everybody on their way, that is how everybody does better in the future. Everybody's going to do okay anyway, but just trying your best to get a good deal for your client, but get them off on their way to the next life. Because second marriages are at a high percentage. They're like percent. Maybe they don't last as long as first marriages, and that is clearly because people are set in their ways. And when you marry somebody who's 55, 52, 58, if you try to change him or her, that's going to be a tough deal. So, and I've seen that. I mean, people have come to me, it's my second marriage, it's my third marriage. I'm like, okay, can you tell me a little bit about it? And they're like, it was just wrong from the beginning. I should have known. When you're 25 and 23, you don't know. And you're not going to know. You're going to have to do a little bit on faith, get married, and hope it works for the best. But when you're 50, 52, 48, 58, if you meet somebody, you need to understand, are they a compromising kind? Are they a giver? Are they a taker? Because it's just not going to work sometimes. And I think that's why the second marriages, luckily not mine, but the second marriages don't work as much as you would think.
Wow.
Well, Sal, thank you for sharing not only your personal journey and the multiple pivots in your life, but all of this valuable information for those who are going through what is a challenging pivot, certainly, as divorce.
If you need to get divorced, get divorced. If you can put your marriage back together, then go for that. Whatever decision you make, don't be afraid of divorce. Don't be afraid of trying to make it back with your spouse. But once you see that it's not working, go find the right attorney, a match for you.
Well, Sal, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Well, I learned a few things, and there's one thing that I knew going in that I even feel stronger about, that I thank goodness that we are happily married and do not have to go through a divorce. But I got to tell you, if I were to go through a divorce, I think I'm much better equipped now in knowing what to do if that were ever presented to me. And certainly if there were ever a chance for me to try and help someone, I can direct them to this podcast because he really shared some great information.
Yeah. Well, relationships are complex,
to say the least.
And each couple faces its own challenges. And there are so many reasons people likely get divorced. You definitely want to be with an attorney that has your best interests at heart. And at the end of the day, and I think this is in every business, is it's all about the people that you work with.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to feel comfortable. You have to feel that someone's got your back. You got to have someone to make sure that they outline all of the steps necessary to get to where you want to go, and importantly, to know that the future is going to be okay. I think about personal pivots of like being in sports and going to college for that reason, but not being a student or not being ready or not peaking yet. And then to become a mailman and to meet someone who influenced you and motivated you.
Yeah, but I think, I mean that's incredible. But more importantly, it's obvious that he recognized certain moments and opportunities throughout his life, right? Like, what if he was said, open. I'm going to stick it out just 3.5 more years at college, and so what if I'm not a football player or anything, and and I'll just be miserable through these 3.5 years. Instead, he made a pivot, came back to New Jersey, went to a local college, realized that it wasn't for him, right? And took another pivot. And each step in the journey takes you closer to where you're supposed to be.
He was open to it.
Well, right. You have to go into it with the right attitude.
And you have to care. You have to care about something. He cared. He cares.
Right. And here's the big takeaway, right? When we talk about between over and next, the next should be a step up, right? Not a step down.
To become your happiest self.
Right. To continue to climb the mountain, right? To achieve better and greater things as you age. There shouldn't be that decline. It should always be onwards and upwards.
And to be fulfilled.
Always.
And actually to make sure that everybody is on the same page in the family, so everybody thrives.
And it comes through communication. So being open and honest.
Sal said that was an important
communication. That's
part.
It. So thank you, Sal, for being a part of this episode. We hope that you have all, as listeners, viewers, taken away some good information. All of the things that Sal talked about during the podcast, we'll have links to those resources in our show notes. So if you're in a situation where you're in the need of an attorney, you need to make sure that the credentials are in place so that you at least have those building blocks in which to move forward. So they'll be in the show notes wherever you're consuming this, and of course on our website at hollyandrobert.com. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we look forward to being with you again. Thanks for tuning in to Between Over and Next. We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it meaningful and insightful.
If you value it to be worthwhile, please share it with your friends and family.
We would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to write a review for us. Your feedback will help us continue to create content that resonates with you.
And don't forget, in the show notes, you can find all the relevant links mentioned in this episode, from accessing free downloads to visiting our website and more.
If you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. Simply send us an email. Our email address is hello@hollyandrobert.com. We're always excited to connect with our listeners.
So until next time, thank you again for joining us on Between Over and Next.
Thank you for listening to Between Over and Next, the podcast that navigates the twists and turns of life with courage, laughter, and a whole lot of inspiration. Tune in every Tuesday to hang out with Holly and Robert on your favorite podcast platform. Visit hollyandrobert.com and follow them on social media to ignite your passion and fuel your dreams.